So we were wondering about what is supposed to be the distinction between Indian and Western philosophy.
So, in connecting with our previous statement, as Western philosophy, I presume, is talking about one particular aspect of philosophy at one particular time, and that also in one particular context, whether chronological or not, that's a different issue. Therefore, Western philosophy is trying to move towards some sort of expertise or specialization in the field. Maybe this is the reason because of which the first half of the Greek philosophy, which we prefer to call it pre-Socratic philosophy, were asking more or less cosmogonical questions, which the others were not. When speaking in this particular context, while the Western philosophy focuses on specialization, the Indian philosophy tries to have an accommodating aspect, and therefore, as Dhirendra Dattaji would say, Indian philosophy has got a typical synthetic outlook. It is encyclopedic in nature because the same philosopher or the same sampradaya of darshan is talking about different aspects of philosophy, though at the same time and within the same discussion.
Wonderful. Let us also, I think, try and remember that the distinction between Indian and Western philosophy has been practically seen in three ways. Some people believe that since it is philosophy, therefore it does not matter whether it is being done in Greece or in India or in Africa. Philosophy means philosophy, so anybody who does philosophy is doing the same thing. And so there is no important division between Indian and Western philosophy. The second view is a very popular and a considered view, which says that try that we may, one important feature of Indian philosophy, all Indian philosophical schools or all classical Indian philosophical schools, is their interest in soteriology. So everybody is talking about liberation or mukti. Even the Charvak is giving you an account of how to have a great life which is liberated from suffering. The Buddha, the Jaina, the other 6 schools, or 11 or many schools, they are all talking about soteriology, and therefore this is one very important feature of Indian philosophy, parallel to which you do not find a feature in common to all Western philosophy. The third position is about Indian and Western is this, that actually, if you are trying to look at similarities, there is a great deal of similarity between Berkeley and Bradley and Advaita Vedanta and maybe a certain version of Buddhism. And perhaps the difference between the Charvak and the Buddhists, the difference between the Nyaya and the Vedanti is far more than the difference which exists between Hegel and Shankar Vedanta. Therefore, many philosophers, including one of the most eminent philosophers of our times, Professor J. Conway, he believed that it is perhaps not a very interesting question to say whether they are the same or not. You have a problem and you find solutions in different systems. If you find a good solution to the problem of universals in Nyaya, go to it. If you think there is a better solution in Aristotle, go to it. So these are also ways of looking at the difference between Indian and Western philosophy. The other important thing which I think we must also remember, taking in mind all these three things, is this. Many people say that Indian philosophy is largely spiritual. Also, many people say that largely Indian philosophy believes in God. But about that, I think we need to have a quick check. If you're trying to look at Astic and Gnostic version, firstly and very importantly, Astic does not mean belief in God. Secondly and importantly, if you're trying to say that belief in God, then the older Sankhya had only Prakriti and Purush. It is the Gita Sankhya which has God, the essential Sankhya. If you look at Mimamsa, it does not have God. So Sankhya and Mimamsa, the two major schools don't have it. Nyaya also does not believe in a God who made everything. Atoms are eternal, God is eternal. So three of the major orthodox systems also do not believe in God. If you think that belief in soul is so fundamental, the Buddhists do not believe in the existence of soul. But certainly, it seems to be right that a certain amount of spirituality is, one way or the other, apart from the Java, a very important defining feature of a large part of Indian philosophy. So we can think that there are important similarities and dissimilarities in different times in different philosophers across the globe, and sometimes in India and sometimes in the West, different things are interested different philosophers. But now I think I'd like you to tell us something about at least 5 or 6 major Greek philosophers before the time of Plato, so that we can get that chronology right.
Before the time of Socrates, so of course, the first one gets all the credit. So starting with, of course, Thales. The credit to Thales is not simply because he was asking the philosophical question. The credit to Thales goes also because of the fact that he was for the first time asking the question, which maybe others haven't got the courage to ask, or maybe others never found it so useful for the society or for the academic endeavor that they thought that whether it should be asked or not. So Thales is given credit not for finding the proper answers, but for asking the proper question. So the fundamental question, what is the ultimate substance or the ultimate principle, is the starting point of philosophy in the West or even in the East.
Right. And what are Thales' answers, and how do we know them?
So when Thales comes to the answer as water, of course, the answer or the solution as water is not important. What is important is what is the specific methodology which the person is applying so as to reach these answers. Of course, he is not using intuition, he is not using revelation, he is not taking the help of any scriptural text if they were available at that time. The only instrument he is applying is his observation and inferential capacity.
Right. So we find that Thales' answer to the question, what is the nature of what is the ultimate constituent of the world, is water. The other thing is that he said that Earth is like a disk floating on water, and the third, I think, is that everything is filled with gods. Who are the other important philosophers?
There was a change in the way Thales was thinking about philosophy, and the change came with none other than Parmenides and of course the debate with Heraclitus. Fundamentally because of the reason that these were the thinkers who realized that actually we are not searching for a substance, we are searching for an eternal and ongoing phenomena which can form the ultimate constituent of the world.
Right. So Parmenides is talking about answering the question about change and permanence, and erring on the side of permanence. And Heraclitus is the person who's talking about change and permanence and erring in the favor of change. What about Anaximander and Anaximenes?
Just a corollary before going back to Anaximander and Anaximenes, this is some sort of confusion which has to be clarified. Parmenides at none point of time is emphasizing that permanency is the ultimate constituent. As W.T. Stace would say, as Professor Burnett would support, and as Frederick Copplestone would re-emphasize, in his first written text, which was in the didactic form, what he is emphasizing is that there are two ultimate constituents, permanency and change. Whether permanency is more important or change, it is a kind of explanation which has been given by the later commentators, and they presume that maybe Parmenides has thought that permanency is the ultimate constituent, but he himself has never said so.
But this I think is a very interesting observation. And why so? Because I think it is important for all of us. right history of philosophy say that the idea of permanence and the obsession of getting it right in one form and getting it mathematically correct is actually coming from Parmenides. And so they all believe that whether Parmenides they have said it or not, but this obsession with a foundation which is mathematically connected to everything else is actually credited to Parmenides. But what about Anaximander and Anaximenes?
I have deliberately not used the name Anaximander and Anaximenes simply because of the reason that I have already mentioned theories and the spirit of philosophization which is found in Anaximander and Anaximenes is not radically opposite to that of theories.
But historically, I think it is interesting to see that in Anaximenes, the answer is in the sense of air, which is more or less like you have, say, one saying water and the other saying air, and it's more or less a sign of a substantial answer to it. But in case of Anaximenes, I think it's fascinating that you find that, it's an undifferentiated thing, as it were, which takes different forms. And so I think this idea that there might be an undifferentiated thing, a formless thing which takes multiple forms, with that depend upon the subject or whatever, that kind of a latent idea is there in Anaximenes. And therefore I thought that, for young students, it is important to notice each one of them, that though we do not get full-fledged books written by them, each one of them, as you rightly said, though they seem to be asking the same kind of question about substantiality, the way they ask it and the way they answer it and the way they justify that answer is hugely interesting. So in the early Greeks, then, by the time we try to understand Aristotle, we need to have in our background Parmenides and Heraclitus, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Thales. Who else would you think?
Yes, as a footnote, once we are talking about Heraclitus' notion of flux, change, and logos, it is mandatory that the students or the beginners should understand how Zeno's paradox.
Absolutely.
I'm
glad you brought it up.
So, this is the beauty of the discipline, that you are going through the hardcore philosophical thesis, but through the examples with which you can connect to, though there are deep philosophical subtle meanings inherent in that. How can you understand the notion of change unless and until you talk about the Achilles and the tortoise, the dot and the line, and the motion and the rest of the arrow? So this is specifically the beauty of the Greek philosophy, which tries to validate the presumptions on the basis of logical arguments, again, which are based on some kind of common day observations and yet philosophizing about them.
Right. So Zeno's paradox, about, simply put, the paradox would be that, if you have an arrow which is starting from one place to the other, it is actually stationary at one point at any given time. So where is the motion? Similarly, like in the Hare and the Tortoise story, which children read, at that time he uses the example of the fastest runner of his time, Achilles, that if he gives an advantage to the other, the division is infinite, which would require a half and a half and all of that. So he can never cover that distance. Obviously, I think the important thing is that everybody can see that it's not true. But is it a difficulty with our linguistic devices? Is it a difficulty with our conceptual devices? What is it a difficulty about? That would decide which kind of solution we have. So here we have an understanding of the early Greek philosophy, saying that early Greek philosophers were primarily trying to answer the question about the nature of reality. But this question was also not answered by an experimental science and observation of the variety which is done by empirical scientists, but by the use of reason. And that is how they are distinguished from the other scientists. Although it is very interesting that we continue to call, up to the time of Newton, we call physics natural philosophy, and the so-called philosophy as moral philosophy. So it's hugely interesting. So now can we again see that, okay, this background, once we have created this background, will it not be useful to talk about the sources of our knowledge of the Greek word?
Yes, yes. That is important, and important also in the sense that most of the theories which we get about pre-Socratic philosophers are not accounted in writing. Well, there are several reasons for that. Writing and recording the documents was not a very popular phenomenon, number one. The required resources were not there in abundance, number two. And third, most of the documents were of course lost in time. Even talking about Thales, most of the evidences regarding the chronological existence of Thales are not coming from written records, rather from some parchments which are available in their torn forms. So there are pieces, there are bits and bits here and there, we collect them, there are some informations given, there are the scientists in the technical sense of the term, who try to trace it chronologically. For the sake of example, Thales talks about some earthquake, he talks about some solar eclipse. Now there are the people who can connect when was the particular time when in the lifespan of one particular person a great earthquake also took place, a great solar eclipse also took place, and then they chronologically situate Thales with a particular time frame.
Right. Our accounts of these philosophers generally are due to Aristotle's account and also Xenophanes' accounts, where we have records, and of course the historic Herodotus, but in which again we do not find very much. But it also, I think it would be good since you have studied in Greece and also been learning the language for a long time, should be very important for us to remind everybody that actually as we talk about Greek philosophy, there was no Greece. There were all these little states, different states which were city-states. There was Ionia, there was Sparta, there was Asia, and most of these places are close to what is more close to Asia, and a large part of the reason where philosophy flourished is the area which would be called Bactria. So when we talk about Greek philosophy, as it were, these were different sets of people in different states, some of which they were engaging in. So that's how we then stop over in our first talk about a general introduction to the nature of philosophy, some kind of approach towards Indian and Western philosophy, and some kind of a general introduction to how do we get to our sources in Greek philosophy. The books that we generally begin with are, as Dr. Shukla mentioned, Copleston's History of Western Philosophy, W.T. Stace's A Critical History of Greek Philosophy, Guthrie's History of Greek Philosophy, Burnet's History of Greek Philosophy, and of course there are many more, including a very recent and nice, exciting book written in the past decade by Vijay Tankha, Ancient